When you picture Manali, you likely imagine this, a picture-perfect postcard of lush, sunlit mountains and bustling tourist markets. It looks completely safe. But geography has a way of hiding its darkest corners in plain sight. Just a few miles up the mountain lies Rohtang Pass. If you ask a local for directions, they will likely warn you to be back before 6 in the evening. There is a very specific reason for that curfew. In the local Tibetan dialect, Rohtang translates literally to the Valley of Death, or a pile of corpses. For centuries, ancient lore has spoken of a Maya, a malicious, shape-shifting illusion hunting in these mountains. Anyone caught up there after dark was often found dead the next morning. Officially, local authorities write these off as exposure to extreme cold or tragic vehicular accidents. Those explanations miss the reality of the terrain. Rohtang Pass is an environmental trap. It uses freezing temperatures and disorienting fog to actively isolate its targets, punishing anyone who ignores the locals' warnings. That skepticism is exactly what 4 friends, Sahil, Arun, Chirag, and Samay, brought to Manali last month. They weren't looking for danger. They were staging a trip to pull Samay out of a crushing depression. Only a few months prior, Samay's younger brother was killed in a violent crash when a vehicle struck his school trip. The loss gutted Samay, turning a guy known for being the life of every party into a quiet, withdrawn shell of himself. Hoping to distract him, the group decided to drive up to Rohtang Pass. When their hotel receptionist begged them to be back before sundown, they laughed. To 4 modern 20-somethings, local ghost stories are just cheap tricks meant to scare tourists. In the dead of night, on an isolated pass, the group was carrying Samay's raw, unresolved grief into a landscape that has historically targeted the vulnerable. By 9 p.m., the environment turned on them. The temperature plummeted. Heavy fog erased the horizon, and the 4 friends found themselves creeping at 30 kilometers an hour, following a sliver of black asphalt into the entity's domain. Peering through the dense fog, they spotted a lone milestone on the side of the mountain road. It read, Manali, 28 kilometers. This map illustrates the spatial anomaly they fell into. They drove for another 20 minutes, only to pass that exact same Manali 28 kilometers marker. And then, 20 minutes later, they hit it a third time. They were driving in a straight line, but the mountain was snapping them back to a fixed coordinate. The space itself wasn't the only thing glitching. Every time they passed that milestone, someone was sitting on it, but the group couldn't agree on what they saw. Sahil saw a man in a white dhoti. Chirag saw a little girl holding a toy. Arun stared directly at a solid black horse. The entity was probing them. By broadcasting different images to each person, a man, a child, an animal, it was testing the group's collective perception, searching for a specific crack in their mental defenses. It found its target in Samay. Through the pitch-black fog, a brand-new apparition materialized outside the car. A bruised 15-year-old boy, covered in dark mud and severe injuries, was running effortlessly alongside the moving vehicle. The entity was weaponizing Samay's specific trauma. By projecting the image of a bleeding, desperate child, it exploited his deepest regret, failing to save his younger brother. Samay stopped fighting. He fell into a dead-eyed trance, smiled warmly at the broken apparition running outside, and started rolling down his window. Panic erupted in the car as Arun slammed the central locking controls, but the system completely failed. Sahil and Chirag lunged across the back seat, physically restraining Samay as he waved at the creature. Arun slammed the gas, breaking their cautious crawl and finally tearing out of the fog, breaking the geographical loop. They thought they had outrun the danger. However, the spatial loop was a holding cell, meant to keep them trapped just long enough for the entity to achieve a psychological breach into Samay's mind. That breach fully manifested back in the safety of their hotel room. At 3:30 in the morning, Sahil woke to the sound of a childhood lullaby. He found Samay standing in the dark, staring into the mirror, singing to his own reflection with an eerie, unnatural smile and bloodshot eyes. The psychological attack quickly became physical. Dark red welts began to rise on Samay's throat, looking like 2 invisible hands choking him from both sides, right before his eyes rolled back and he collapsed. The next morning, a local pundit recognized a specific pattern in the haunting. The entity reached Samay by impersonating his deceased brother, wearing a familiar face to slip past his defenses without a struggle. The pundit began an intensive ritual to purge the invader. The violent spiritual eviction ended with Samay vomiting up a thick, unnaturally dark, viscous liquid, expelling the physical manifestation of the corruption. Paranormal events rarely involve random attacks. These entities operate as opportunistic parasites. They observe us, map the shape of our deepest grief, and pour themselves into the cracks we leave behind. Samay survived the physical ordeal and returned to normal, but the experience left a permanent scar on the rest of the group. To this day, Sahil is tormented by severe nightmares, waking up to the phantom sound of that twisted lullaby. Centuries of folklore describe a similar pattern, an unhealed mind acting like a beacon. In these stories, unresolved trauma functions as a doorway, inviting external shadows to take root where the self has been hollowed out. Modern skepticism provides zero protection when a mind is actively mourning. Extreme grief overrides rational defense mechanisms, making logic irrelevant. Rohtang Pass provided the isolation and the fog, but Samay provided the anchor. Up on that mountain, the external entity found the perfect match for the darkness he was already carrying.